Hello, my name is Simon Gard. I'm working on an Octane plugin for Carrara. Um, some of the features of this plugin um, I will demonstrate by starting with a simple scene. I'm going to add a few objects to the scene. And then I will color those objects. Okay, and then I will start out. Well, first we'll rearrange our camera. Nice view. There we go. Let's see what our production frame is. I'll open up Octane. And there we go. We have our scene. I think I'll also turn on sunlight. Refresh Octane. Right now this is all manually refreshed. Eventually I'll have it so that any edit changes you make will be reflected in the renderer, but at this stage it's a manual refresh. I'll add an infinite plane, which isn't really infinite, but for our purposes it should work. Update Octane again. I better change the camera angle a little. Go. Refresh again. Okay, so we have our basic functionality, colors. We can also change it to be a texture map. And refresh, we can see that it's been applied within Octane. That's pretty well the limit of our material support at this point directly from Carrara. However, you can get at the entire scene graph, the Octane scene graph from this render settings pane. Right now all the meshes are listed within the render target itself, but I plan to move that onto its own tab simply because the material handling within Carrara lends itself to be more suitable to edit on its own rather than having it integrated into the render target. However, at this point, just make sure things are working. I've placed them in here, and we can manually edit our materials in here. You can brighten up the colors a bit. Again, it's manual. At this point, it's manual refresh. However, that will be dynamic later on. just more convenient to set a bunch of changes and then apply them rather than having your scene constantly being refreshed at this stage anyway. You can see we've got a bitmap in there, so we can change that back to a spectrum. And we can come down to blue boy. And apply those. So there we go, back to our original colors. All the pins work. Switch environments at any point. You can switch kernels. Go try an info channel. Not much information in Z-depth, however. How about shading normals? There we go. So that's pretty well our render settings are configurable. When we go back to Octane, if we do a new refresh, it will actually reload all the textures from the Carrara's set and override the settings we just made. However, once I get dynamic updates working, that won't happen. It'll keep the settings that you configure in the settings tab window. Finally, I have working. It's one of the nice features of Carrara. Well, let's load a couple of basic scenes. Let's just close that one. Just load up as any old scene from Carrara till Octane scene's changed, and we get an instant update. Picks up the daylight model, makes ROI textures as appropriate. So yeah, right now it just picks up the colors and texture maps, but I plan to incorporate a lot more of the material system provided by Carrara as much as possible, considering the differences between the material systems. What I'd like to show you is instancing. One of the nice features of Carrara is that it has its own scatter mechanism called replicators. So this is a surface replicator I'll demonstrate. So we need a globe. I'm just going to center it for now. Just want to set it to the origin. We'll then add a cylinder to the scene, which will act as our replicated object. Just scale that down. Like so. We'll then select the sphere. We'll grab our replicator, and then we'll move the cylinder into the replicator. Oops. Like so. We'll then edit our replicator settings, and we will open up our render window. So go back to our scene. Zoom in a little. Add some color. Cylinder, sphere. Make that. Oops. Nice blue sphere. Still Octane to update itself. And select our primitive, our replicated object, and we will color that one, say red. Come back and update Octane. And voila, we have, sure what our daylight model is, our lighting model. Sky. Is Octane updated? We can rotate the camera. I mean, you're not going to see much in the rotation because there's no reference. So that's instancing. There's all kinds of other instancing scenarios that Carrara supports. Even distribution. That's the one fun one we could do. There's one more scene I'd like to show you. Again with the replication, this is using their normal replicator as opposed to the surface replicator. Just need a couple of, we need our replicator and we need something to replicate. So I'm just creating this something to replicate. To just be another cylinder. And we'll give it a color. Just let it show up. Let's also switch to daylight. And then we select a replicator, drop our cylinder on the replicator. And we have a replicated grid, but for fun, let's just switch that to a ball. Oops. And then we get a fancy ball type shape. We'll open up Octane, and there we have it. I do a bit of zooming in. And those are all instances. If you look at our rendering settings, you can see that the geometry scatter here with one geometry, and then the second geometry is our source object. And then you have instancing. One more thing I'd like to show you is loading more complex objects. The Carrara supports loading all the DAZ models, DAZ and Poser, DAZ Studio and Poser. like to try and do is okay, it's taking its time. There we go. Try and load up Ducky here. And it'll take a while to load. It's got to convert from this DUF format, Dad Studio, into all the mesh understood by Carrara. And here we have the duck loaded up, and just want to show them in Octane. And see, he's there. He's a bit blurry because he's not centered. It's just some of my plans for this window is being able to click to focus and white balance. That's pretty standard. Just hasn't been done yet. And these menu items will become buttons rather than menu items. That's the only other thing I'd like to do. So we have our duck here, but he's not very visible. So I'll just move this out of the way for a bit. The reason is that this, because I'm running the demo SDK, you can tell with all the squiggly lines, it's cropped it off to the side because I told it to render bigger than it should be. So I need to go to the render settings. And I can set the output to the supported the demo, and then refresh Octane, and there he is recentered. Go back to our main view. Can play with the camera a bit. Zoom from different angles. And of course, without all the proper texturing support, he looks odd to say the least. But anyway, this is a Daz character based on Genesis that's loaded up in Carrara and rendered in Octane. I would now like to demonstrate the sunlight tracking that I've added to Carrara. So we pick the scene, we select a realistic sky atmosphere. We will update Octane. You can see the sun is now shining. We will then use Carrara's sunlight system. We have a nice little global wall which tells you where the sun is. Stick it off in a sunset kind of position. Update Octane. The new sun's changed. You can also set sky color. Do something a little more dramatic. Update Octane. And then we have Octane daylight controlled through Carrara.